The Laurent family is offering $2 million for your life fluid.
$2 million for my life fluid?
It's worth far more than that.
I'm Jason, 48 years old, and last winter I was completely destroyed financially. Like living in my brother's basement eating 2 packs of ramen a day broke. The kind of broke where you avoid mirrors because you don't want to see what failure looks like. But let me start from the beginning because the whole thing is completely insane. 6 months before everything fell apart, I owned Hartley Demolition Services. Built it from nothing over 20 years. Had 14 crews working across 3 states, government contracts, the whole deal. I had a house with a pool in the suburbs, a wife named Jennifer who loved hosting dinner parties, and my son Tyler was finishing his 2nd year at state. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and I'd earned every bit of it with sweat and smart decisions. The morning my life exploded started normal enough. I was standing at the Riverside Mall demolition site with coffee in one hand and blueprints in the other. The old Brennan's department store had been sitting empty for 12 years. This massive 4-story brick building that needed to come down so the city could build their new shopping complex. $20 million project, and my company had won the bid against 3 bigger firms. I was so proud of that win. Thought it proved something about me. My project manager, Danny, had been with me 8 years. Knew demolition inside and out. He'd triple-checked everything. Waved the permit paperwork at me like a victory flag that morning. City signed off on all the utility shutoffs, he told me. Gas, electric, water, everything's been disconnected and capped. I trusted Danny completely. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was not walking the basement myself one more time. My third was being too excited about landing the biggest contract in my company's history to ask the hard questions that might have saved everything. I was too busy telling Jennifer about it over dinner. Too busy imagining what this contract would mean for our future. The demolition itself went perfectly. Textbook perfect. The charges fired in sequence, the building folded in on itself exactly as planned, collapsing like a house of cards the way we'd designed it. Then, when the dust started clearing, we heard this hissing sound. Someone yelled about gas and I smelled it immediately. That sharp, unmistakable smell of natural gas. "Everyone back," I screamed, and my crew scattered like I'd taught them to do in emergencies. Turns out we'd clipped a gas main that wasn't on any city blueprint. It had been installed in 1962 by some company that doesn't exist anymore, feeding part of the old downtown that had been redeveloped 3 times since. Nobody alive remembered it being put in because everyone involved in that installation was either dead or retired. Thank God nobody got hurt, but the fire department evacuated 6 blocks. The gas company had to do emergency shutoffs across half the business district. The 11 o'clock news led with aerial footage of my disaster, reporter using words like negligence and catastrophic oversight, while my company logo showed clear as day on every single hard hat. The lawsuit started the next week. City wanted $10 million in damages, gas company wanted $5 million. Every business that lost even a day of revenue wanted their compensation. My insurance company sent a team of lawyers who spent 3 days going through our paperwork before delivering their verdict in my own conference room. The policy clearly states that all permits must be verified independently, the lead attorney said, sliding papers across the table without even looking at me. Your signatures on documents stating all underground utilities were mapped and cleared. Since that wasn't true, we're denying coverage. I tried arguing that the city gave us wrong information, that their blueprints were incomplete and outdated. The attorney just slid more papers across the table and pointed to page 47, subsection 12. "Then you should have verified independently," he said. "It's in your contract, Mr. Hartley. You signed it." Within 4 months, everything vanished. The company I'd built over 20 years dissolved into paperwork and legal fees. The house I'd bought when Tyler was born foreclosed. Trucks and equipment all auctioned off to pay a fraction of what I owed. Business accounts frozen, credit completely obliterated, drowning in debt I'd never escape, even if I lived to be 100. Jennifer lasted exactly 2 weeks after the foreclosure notice arrived. I came home one morning and she was already dressed. Makeup perfect, suitcases by the door. Her sister Patricia was outside in a Mercedes, engine running, not even bothering to come inside. Jennifer said she needed to stay with Patricia for a while. Needed time to think about us. Think about us, I said. We need to stay together. This is when married people support each other. She looked at me with this expression I'd never seen in 22 years of marriage, like I was something disgusting she'd stepped in. I didn't marry a loser, Jason, she said. You're 48 years old and you're about to be homeless. You can't even afford to take me to dinner anymore. Then she said the words I'll never forget, the ones that still wake me up at night. You know what you are now? You're just another broke, middle-aged failure who couldn't hack it. I reminded her we'd been married 22 years. She picked up her jewelry box, the one I'd bought for our 15th anniversary after saving for months, and said, "And for 21 of them, you were successful." She walked to the door, then turned back. "My lawyer will send papers," she said. "Don't contest it, Jason. Just let me go with whatever dignity you have left." After she left, I sat in that empty house surrounded by boxes of stuff I couldn't afford to store and called my brother Nathan. "Come stay with me," he said immediately. No hesitation. "The basement's not much, but it's warm and dry. You're my brother." Nathan runs a small HVAC repair business. Does well enough to support his wife Carol and their 2 kids, but not well enough that having his failure of a brother sleeping in the basement wasn't a real burden. His wife Carol tried being kind about it, but I could see the strain in her eyes every time she set an extra plate at dinner, every time I came upstairs and interrupted their family time. I was the cautionary tale, sleeping on their pull-out couch. My dad, who I'll call William for now, called every few days from his place in Kansas. He's 73, living on Social Security in a duplex that's seen better days. "Son, I've got about 12,000 in savings," he'd offer, his voice gruff with the emotion he'd never been good at expressing. "It's yours if you need it." "Dad, you're 73 and living on Social Security," I'd say. "I'm not taking your money." "But you're my boy, Jason. Let me help." I told him I'd figure it out, that I always had. Except I wasn't figuring it out. By January, I was down to my last $40. The basement at Nathan's house had become my whole world. A pull-out couch with a broken spring that dug into my back every night, a card table where I ate my meals alone, and one small window that showed just enough sky to remind me there was still a world outside where normal people lived normal lives. Every morning I'd wake up to the sound of Nathan's kids getting ready for school overhead, their footsteps a reminder of the normal life happening above me, while I hid below like something shameful. Tyler had called the night before, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the worry bleeding through his forced cheerfulness. "Dad, I've been thinking," he said. "I can take a semester off, get a job. There's a construction company here that's hiring." "Absolutely not," I told him, gripping the phone hard enough to make my knuckles white. "You're 3 semesters from graduating. You stay in school." "But Dad," he started, and I could hear him struggling. "I heard Mom talking to Aunt Patricia. She said you're living in Uncle Nathan's basement, that you're eating ramen every day, that you don't even have money for gas." The betrayal of Jennifer discussing my situation like gossip stung worse than the hunger. "Your mother doesn't know everything about my situation," I said, trying to sound confident. "Tyler, I'm fine. I have an interview next week for a big commercial project. They need a foreman with experience. This could be the thing that turns it all around." "Dad, just let me help," he said. "I can send you something from my work-study money. It's not much, but—" "Tyler, stop," I interrupted. "I'm your father. I take care of you, not the other way around. Focus on your studies, promise me." "Okay, Dad," he said quietly. "I promise." After hanging up, I'd stared at the ceiling until 3 in the morning, calculating and recalculating the $40 in my wallet. The interview was in 3 days, 90 miles away. Gas would cost at least $30. That left 10 for food for the rest of the week. The math of poverty was simple and cruel and unforgiving. The next morning, Nathan left early for a job. Carol was getting the kids ready for school, and I could hear her on the phone with her mother through the basement ceiling. "No, Mom, he's trying," she was saying. "He applies for jobs every day. But who's going to hire a 48-year-old former owner for entry-level work? They know he'll leave the second something better comes up." I waited until they were all gone before going upstairs. The pantry had a few cans of soup I wouldn't touch because That was their food, not mine. The ramen I'd bought last week was down to 2 packages. I mixed one with hot water, ate it standing at the sink, and tried not to think about the steaks I used to grill on weekends, or the restaurants Jennifer and I used to go to. That's when I saw the sign on my walk to the library, where I used free Wi-Fi to apply for jobs. BioCore Plasma Center, it said. New donors, $50 first visit. I stood outside for 10 minutes watching people go in and out. Some looked like college students, probably doing it for beer money or textbooks. Others looked like me, middle-aged and tired, carrying that particular weight of failure in their shoulders. A woman came out counting cash, looking relieved. A young guy in construction boots went in, probably between shifts. $50 meant gas to that interview. It meant maybe getting a real meal before I showed up, so I wouldn't look as desperate as I was. It meant buying a few more days to pretend I could climb out of this hole I'd fallen into. I walked in at 8 on a Tuesday morning, filled out the paperwork with hands that shook slightly from hunger and humiliation. The questions were invasive and humiliating. Have you eaten today? No. When did you last eat a full meal? I lied and put yesterday instead of 3 days ago. Are you currently employed? No. Is this donation for personal financial need? Yes. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and defeat. A woman across from me was reading a romance novel, trying to look like she was here by choice. A young guy was asleep in his chair, exhausted. We were all pretending this was normal, that selling pieces of ourselves was just another Tuesday morning errand, like getting groceries or picking up dry cleaning. A nurse called my name. Her name tag said Rebecca. She was maybe 25, pretty in that fresh-faced way that made me feel every one of my 48 years. First time? She asked kindly. Yeah, I said. Never thought I'd be here. She led me to a recliner, started preparing the needle and supplies. No shame in it, Mr. Hartley, she said. You're helping save lives. Plus, everybody needs a little help sometimes. Some more than others, I said, watching her tap my arm to find a vein. You'd be surprised, she said. Last week we had a lawyer in here. Month before that, a doctor. Hard times don't discriminate. The needle went in smooth, and I watched my life fluid flow through the tube into the collection bag, dark red, almost purple in the harsh fluorescent light. My father had donated life fluid regularly when I was a kid. Used to take me along to the Red Cross drives at the VFW hall. It's what decent people do, he'd say, never expecting anything in return. But he was donating to help others, doing it for the right reasons. I was doing it for $50 in gas money. Your blood looks really healthy, Rebecca said, checking the flow and adjusting something. Good color, good consistency. Then she frowned, leaned closer to the collection bag. That's strange, she said. What's strange? I asked, my heart rate immediately jumping. She pulled a small vial from the line, held it up to the light. I need to run a quick test, she said. Standard procedure, nothing to worry about. She took the vial to a machine in the corner, put a drop on a slide, and looked through a microscope. I watched her entire body language change, a straightening of the spine, a quick intake of breath. She looked again, adjusting the microscope, then a third time. Then she backed away from the microscope like it had shown her something impossible, something that shouldn't exist. Mr. Hartley, she whispered, turning to face me with eyes wide. I need to get the director right now. Please don't move. Don't disconnect anything. This is very important. Am I sick? I asked, and the questions came out sharp because suddenly every worst-case scenario was flooding my mind. Is something wrong? No, sir, she said quickly. Nothing's wrong. Everything's about to be very right. Then she practically ran to the door. I'm sitting there with the needle in my arm, the machine still steadily pumping, and every worst-case scenario is flooding my mind. Cancer, HIV, some rare disease that would finish what losing everything had started. Around me, other donors were scrolling through phones, oblivious to whatever drama was unfolding in my recliner. The TV was droning on about mortgage rates and stock markets, and I almost laughed at the bitter irony of it. Dr. Harrison arrived within minutes, this tall, thin guy who looked at my blood sample, then at his computer screen, then back at the sample like he was solving an equation that shouldn't exist in nature. "Mr. Hartley, we need to run a comprehensive panel immediately," he said. "I can't afford any tests," I told him. "My insurance is gone." "No charge," he said. "This is extraordinary." He pulled up a chair right next to my recliner, sat close enough that I could smell his coffee breath, and his eyes were bright with excitement that seemed completely out of place in this depressing donation center where people sold pieces of themselves to make rent. "Your life fluid type is Rh null," he said, speaking clearly. "We call it golden life fluid. Only about 43 people on Earth have been documented with this type." I just stared at him, trying to process words that sounded like science fiction. "Is that bad?" I asked. "Bad?" he repeated, almost laughing. "Mr. Hartley, your life fluid can save anyone with rare blood types within the Rh system. It's universal for people who otherwise have no donors at all. You're literally 1 in 200 million people." His phone buzzed. He answered immediately, speaking rapidly to someone I couldn't see, his eyes never leaving me like I might disappear. "Yes, confirmed Rh null," he was saying. "He's here now. I understand the urgency. Yes, I can keep him here." He hung up and immediately dialed another number, pacing now. "We've just received an urgent request," he said into the phone. "There's a situation developing." Before he could explain anything, the door burst open, and this woman walked in like she owned the entire building. Everything about her screamed serious money, from her Italian leather shoes to the designer bag she carried like a weapon. Dr. Harrison straightened up, suddenly looking nervous. "Ms. Moretti," he said. She turned to me, and I saw desperation beneath her professional composure, like she was holding herself together through sheer willpower. "Mr. Hartley, my name is Catherine Moretti. I represent the Laurent family of Monaco." She sat down across from me without asking. "Alexander Laurent is dying. He needs a transfusion within 12 hours, and you're the only match we've found in North America." "Monaco," I said stupidly. "That's in Europe." "The family jet is waiting at the executive airport," she said. "Mr. Hartley, the Laurents are prepared to offer $2 million for your immediate cooperation. We need to leave now. Every minute matters." $2 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. I looked at my arm, at the needle drawing out life fluid I'd been about to sell for $50. This morning I woke up broke in my brother's basement, eating ramen, and now someone was offering $2 million for my life fluid? "This is insane," I said. "This morning I was applying for minimum wage jobs." "Mr. Hartley," she said, her voice softening slightly. "Alexander Laurent is one of the wealthiest men in Europe. His shipping empire employs 30,000 people across 6 continents. He has children, grandchildren, a foundation that funds hospitals and schools. He's been searching for a compatible donor for 3 years. You're not just life fluid to him. You're hope." I thought about Tyler trying to finish college while his mother told him what a disappointment his father had become. I thought about Nathan and Carol pretending it wasn't a burden to feed me. I thought about my father offering me his Social Security savings. $2 million would change everything. But something wasn't adding up. "Why the urgency if he's been searching for 3 years?" I asked. "He had an incident yesterday," she explained. "Internal bleeding from a condition that's been managed for years. He needs emergency surgery, but without compatible life fluid for transfusion, the surgery will eliminate him. We have maybe 10 hours to get you there, get you processed, and perform the surgery. Mr. Hartley, every minute we spend talking is a minute we're losing." Then Dr. Harrison said something that made everything even stranger. "What about the DNA test?" I asked him, remembering Rebecca had mentioned running additional tests. He hesitated, glancing at Catherine. "That can wait," he said. "No," Catherine interrupted, surprising me. "Tell him. He deserves to know before he decides." Dr. Harrison pulled up something on his tablet, showed me a complex chart that might as well have been hieroglyphics. "When we identified your Rh null status, we ran a comprehensive genetic panel," he explained. "It's standard protocol for rare life fluid types. But we found something else. Genetic markers that indicate, Mr. Hartley, Did your mother ever mention anything unusual about your birth? My mother died when I was 2, I said. Car accident. Why? And your father never remarried? No, I said. What does this have to do with my life fluid? Catherine stepped forward. Mr. Hartley, the genetic markers Dr. Harrison found match a very specific lineage. The Laurent family has been searching for life fluid relatives for 30 years. Alexander Laurent had a younger brother named Philippe, who disappeared in 1973. My mouth went dry. She continued. Philippe Laurent came to America and changed his name to William Hartley. Mr. Hartley, the man you're being asked to save, Alexander Laurent, is your father's brother, your uncle. The room started spinning. That's impossible, I said. My father was born in Kansas. His parents were farmers. Your father was born Philippe Laurent in Marseille, she said gently. He fled France after a family dispute over inheritance. He created an entirely new identity. She pulled out an old photograph, yellowed at the edges and creased from being carried. 2 young men standing by a yacht, champagne glasses raised, smiling at something beyond the camera. One was clearly a younger version of the man in the medical files she'd shown me, Alexander. The other one made my heart stop completely. It was my dad. The word came out as a whisper. It was him, my father, William Hartley, maybe 25 years old, wearing clothes I'd never seen him able to afford, standing next to a yacht bigger than Nathan's entire house. Your father walked away from one of Europe's largest shipping fortunes, Catherine said. Alexander respected his choice, never tried to force contact or bring him back. But now Alexander is dying, and his children don't share the rare blood type. Only Philippe's line carries it. Only you. My father is William Hartley from Kansas, I said. But even as I said it, pieces were clicking into place like a puzzle I'd never known was incomplete. How he never talked about his childhood, ever. No photos before 1975. The way he sometimes muttered in his sleep in what I'd thought was gibberish, but might have been French. His strange reaction whenever I'd asked about my grandparents. Always changing the subject, always finding something urgent to do. Call him, Dr. Harrison suggested gently. Ask him yourself. My hand shook as I pulled out my phone. The same phone I'd been using to apply for minimum wage jobs and check my bank account that never had enough. I dialed the number I'd known my whole life, waiting as it rang once, twice, 3 times. Jason, he answered. Everything okay? Dad, I said, and my voice was shaking. I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. Is your real name Philippe Laurent? The silence lasted so long I thought he'd hung up. I could hear his breathing, slow and deliberate. The way he breathed when he was lifting something heavy, or thinking through a really difficult problem. Then in a voice I'd never heard before, older and sadder and carrying an accent I'd never noticed because I'd never been listening for it, he spoke. How did you find out? Those 4 words changed everything. My father wasn't William Hartley, retired railroad engineer who lived in a duplex and clipped coupons. He was someone else entirely, someone who'd been hiding for 40 years. I'm sitting in a plasma center, Dad, I said. They found something in my life fluid. There's a man in Monaco who needs it. Alexander Laurent. He needs my blood to survive surgery. Alexander, he said, and the name came out broken, like a bone finally snapping after years of pressure. Henri is dying? I used his given name because that's what came out. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I chose to be William Hartley, he said, and I could hear emotion he'd suppressed for decades. I chose America. I chose your mother. I chose to build something with my own hands instead of inheriting it. Philippe Laurent died in 1973, Jason. I eliminated him the day I got on that plane to New York with $20,000 and a fake passport. But Alexander is your brother, I said. My uncle. And he's dying, Dad. He's a good man, my father said, and I could hear 40 years of regret and love and complicated history in those 4 words. We had our differences, but he's family. The fight was never really about money, you know. It was about freedom. He wanted me to be someone I couldn't be, and I wanted to be free to find out who I really was. They're offering $2 million, Dad. He laughed, actually laughed, and for the first time I heard the man he must have been before he became William Hartley. Alexander always did like grand gestures, he said. When we were young, he once bought every flower in Nice because a girl mentioned she liked roses, filled her entire apartment building's lobby, made the papers. Dad, I need to know the truth, I said. All of it. Come see me after you save my brother, he said. I'll tell you everything then. But Jason, you go. You take their money, you save Alexander, and you tell him that Philippe forgave him 40 years ago. Tell him I named my son after American heroes because I wanted you to be as free as I felt the day I first saw those wide open spaces. Tell him I never regretted my choice, but I never stopped loving him either. I hung up and looked at Catherine. I'll go, I said, but I want to understand everything. You will, she said, already on her phone arranging transportation. The car will be here in 5 minutes. Dr. Harrison carefully removed the needle from my arm, and Rebecca bandaged the spot with extraordinary care, like she was handling something precious. You're about to save a life, Mr. Hartley, she said, maybe more than one. The ride to the executive airport was surreal. Catherine sat across from me in the leather interior of a Bentley I'd only seen in magazines, making calls in rapid French. I caught my father's real name several times, Philippe, and each time it sounded like a stranger. The jet was already running when we arrived, sleek and white with Laurent Industries written in small, elegant letters near the tail. Have you ever flown private, Mr. Hartley? Catherine asked. I've never even flown first class, I admitted. The interior looked like a luxury hotel suite, nothing like the cramped commercial planes I'd been on. Cream leather seats that looked like they cost more than my first car, polished wood tables, actual artwork on the walls, and a bedroom in the back. A full medical team was already on board preparing equipment. Dr. Sarah Chen introduced herself as Alexander's personal physician. Your blood is going to allow us to perform surgery that will save his life, she explained as we took off. Without it, we couldn't risk the procedure. You're literally his only hope, Mr. Hartley. During the flight, Catherine showed me more photos. My father, Philippe, at different ages, always beside Alexander. In one, they were laughing at a wedding. In another, standing on a yacht in the Mediterranean. In yet another, seated together at a long boardroom table. In every picture taken before 1973, my father looked out of place, like he was trapped inside someone else's life. Then she showed me the last photo, the one that broke me. This was taken the day before he left, she said. My father stood alone on a dock, staring out at the sea. Even in the faded image, I could feel his longing, to be somewhere else, to be someone else, to finally breathe. He left a note, Catherine said softly. Alexander kept it all these years. She handed me a yellowed page, the ink faint but still legible. I recognized my father's handwriting immediately, rounded, firm, familiar from old birthday cards. Alexander, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not because I hate you or our family, but because I love you too much to keep pretending. The company, the fortune, the weight of expectations, they're yours. You were made for it. I wasn't. I'm going to America to find out what I am meant to be. Maybe I'll fail, but at least it'll be my failure. Tell Mama and Papa I'm sorry. Tell them I'll always be their son, just not the one they wanted. And tell yourself, this isn't goodbye. It's just me learning how to breathe. Philippe. We landed in Monaco at sunset, the whole city glowing gold. The hospital looked more like a luxury hotel than a medical center. Marble floors, art on the walls, wide windows facing the sea. Alexander was in a private wing that filled an entire floor, complete with its own nurses. When they wheeled me in for the first transfusion, I finally met my uncle. He was smaller than I'd imagined, pale and frail, but his eyes were sharp and warm, my father's eyes. You have your grandmother's eyes, he said in lightly accented English. Philippe's boy. He wrote me once when you were born. Said he named you Jason after American heroes. Said you were his greatest pride. Something no fortune could ever buy. Transfusion took 4 hours. Between his rest breaks, we talked. About their childhood in France. About the shipping business their father had built from a single boat after the war. About the argument that drove Philippe to leave and become William. It was never about money, Alexander said. It was about choice. I wanted him to choose the family, He wanted to choose himself. We were both right and both wrong. Do you regret not finding him? I asked. Every day, he said quietly. But I respected his freedom. That was the only thing I could give him. Even when I wanted to bring him home, I knew that would be for me, not for him. The surgery was the next morning. My rare golden life fluid, the same that had sat unnoticed in me for 48 years, made it possible. Alexander survived. Within days, color returned to his face and laughter to his room. He joked with his children and grandkids, my cousins, I kept reminding myself. Family I never knew existed. $2 million appeared in my account, just as promised. But that wasn't the biggest gift. Alexander's daughter, Marie, was a real estate developer expanding into the U.S. She met me my last night there. Over dinner by the harbor, she said they were looking for someone they could trust. Someone who understood demolition and rebuilding. Family, she said with a smile that looked exactly like my father's. I lost my company, I admitted. You lost a fight with red tape and bad records, she said. That's not failure. And if you're a Laurent, rebuilding is in your life fluid, literally. I flew back to America 3 days later, but I wasn't the same man who'd walked into that plasma center broke and hopeless. The money was real. I checked my account a dozen times just to be sure. But what mattered more was knowing who I really was, and why my father had chosen to leave everything behind. My first stop was Kansas. Dad was waiting at his old duplex, coffee brewing in the same battered pot, 2 mugs waiting on the same table where he'd once helped me with homework. But I saw him differently now, not just as William Hartley, the frugal railroad man, but as Philippe Laurent, the man who walked away from privilege to build an honest life. Alexander sends his love, I said. Is he all right? He will be, I said. The surgery worked. He wanted you to know there's no anger, only love. You're welcome home any time. Dad gave me that quiet, sad smile that carried years of unspoken history. I am home, Jason, he said. I've been home since the day your mother poured me coffee at that diner in Omaha and asked why I looked so sad. I fell in love right then. Trembling, for 6 hours, my father turned back into Philippe. He shared stories I'd never heard before. He told me how he'd come to New York with $20,000 he'd quietly saved in 2 years, determined to vanish. He took railroad jobs because they kept him on the move, hard to trace, always somewhere new. He met my mother, Linda, when his train broke down in Nebraska. She worked at a roadside diner, served him coffee and pie, and somehow became his whole world. She never knew, he said softly. I wanted to tell her 100 times, especially after we married. But how do you tell the woman you love that you've lied about who you are from the start? Did you ever regret it? I asked. Every Christmas I couldn't buy her what she deserved, he said. Every time you or Nathan needed something I couldn't give. When you wanted that private school. When she got sick and I couldn't afford the best doctors. But then I'd see you two playing in the yard, building forts out of cardboard and dreams. And I'd know I'd made the right choice. You grew up free, Jason. Free to fail, to succeed, to become who you really are without any family name weighing you down. That's worth more than any inheritance. That evening, I called Tyler from my hotel room. Dad, he said right away. How was the interview? Imprisoned. I didn't go, I told him. Something more important came up. Relinquibout. You're scaring me. Your grandfather has stories to tell you, I said, and you don't have to worry about tuition or rent anymore. Dad, what's going on? Are you okay? I donated life fluid, I said. Sometimes when you think you've lost everything, that's when you finally find out what you're really worth. Discharged the next morning, I called Jennifer from my rental car. Jason, why are you calling? She asked, irritated. I told you my lawyer would handle everything. Don't make this harder. I'm not calling to fix anything, I said calmly. I'm calling to thank you. Thank me? For what? For leaving. For calling me a loser. For showing me who you really were when things got tough. Because if you hadn't, I never would have gone to that plasma center. Never would have learned what was in my life fluid, or who I really am. What are you talking about? She asked, confused. I'm talking about how sometimes being broken is the only way to see what you're made of. Goodbye, Jennifer. Have a good life. I hung up before she could answer. For once, it felt good to end the story myself. A month later, I was back in business. Hartley International Demolition, now a branch of Laurent Development Group. My first job? A $40 million project in Chicago, bigger than anything I'd ever done. I rehired 6 of my old crew, men who'd stood by me when I couldn't pay them. "Boss, heard you came into some family money," my foreman Jake said that first day. "Something like that," I smiled. "Turns out I've got family in shipping." 6 months later, I sat in my new office. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, earned the hard way. My father, William or Philippe, depending on his mood, visited often now that I could fly him out. We reviewed applications for a training program I'd started to give kids from rough backgrounds a chance to learn the trade. "Giving people second chances," he said proudly. "Someone once told me failure isn't falling, it's staying down. And sometimes," I said, "you have to lose everything to see what you're really worth." "2 million, apparently," he joked, sipping coffee. "No," I said, thinking of Alexander, of the life fluid that tied us all together. "I'm worth what everyone's worth, whatever someone else needs to survive. I just got lucky enough to find out." Last week, the plasma center called. Another patient needed rare life fluid, another life hanging by a thread. This time I didn't hesitate, I just went. Some gifts aren't in what we build or earn, but in what's been running through us all along, waiting to be found. My name is Jason Hartley, son of Philippe Laurent, who once became William Hartley, nephew of Alexander Laurent, whose life I saved with the same life fluid that linked us, and father of Tyler, who'll inherit both the story and the choice of what to do with it. I've learned that sometimes being called a loser is just the start of finding out what winning really means. It took selling my life fluid for $50 to discover I was worth millions, not because of what I'd built or lost, but because of what had been inside me the whole time, waiting for the right moment to be seen.